I want to welcome everybody. And for Alex and Ryan, you can turn off your cameras for just a second and we'll bring you back. I want to welcome everybody here. This is our final virtual internship webinar of the school year. And some of you have been here all along or have been to many. If you've been to webinars before today, tell us in the chat if you've been here before. We're so grateful to have people join us each time. We've had so many wonderful conversations over the past several months, and this is our final one today. And I do want to mention we'll continue these sessions in the fall. We have something else special lined up for the summer that I will talk about in a second. But welcome to our final one on the world of agriculture. Have two really cool guests today doing very different tasks and jobs in the industry. So we're going to learn about what they do. Before we do that, for the folks who are new and also the folks who have been here before, we have a lot of information to pass along, some updates, some information. So let me first hit that, and then we'll get to our special guests. And Mac from our team will be in the chat. If you have questions or need additional information, there she is. She'll be hopping over to the chat. So for those who have missed it, I've been offering this out all spring long. We've given this out to dozens and dozens of teachers, which is great. It's a Google folder with worksheets and presentations. For the teachers here, please raise your hands if your students send you emails that look like text messages too often. Show of hands, and we see some hands going up with that. So a lot of what we do as a Rubin company, and I'm the founder of our company, Rubin, is we teach students effective email etiquette, phone etiquette, all kinds of communication skills, employability skills. And so we put together a collection of resources. You can see the topics here. Presentations and worksheets in a Google folder, easy to access. Okay, so all of this in a Google folder, as well as this online presentation checklist we've also been giving out throughout the spring, helping teachers and students with best practices for how to present virtually, how to look your best, how to sound your best, a good checklist to keep by the computer. So for those who are interested, who have not received the material before, and this is for the teachers, not the students, it'll get down to the students. So this is a teacher offer. Please go to the chat and type interested and your email address. And for the new folks, we always like to have a brief conversation in the next day or so to say hello and learn how to help you make the most of this content in your class this year, the summer, the fall, whatever's in front of you. So if you like this material, please type interested and your email address right now, and we'll make sure to pass it along in the next day or so you have it quickly and you can add it to your toolkit for future semesters. Okay, so I want to mention that, and we'll mention it again at the end in case some folks come a little bit later and they can see it. Also, if you're going to watch this on a delay, like if you end up showing this to somebody or you're watching it on a recording, you can also receive these resources by typing in Rubin worksheets and emailing us, and we'll get it to you separately at the support@rubineducation.com email address. If you're watching, we put these all on our YouTube channel. A lot of people watch these recorded, so you can also receive those resources after the fact. Now, a couple of other exciting announcements to share. I mentioned that we are ending our virtual internship webinars for the summer, but we are going to have a special webinar series for educators, calling it our Rubin Summer Learning Series, where we're going to cover different topics for employability skills, giving you lessons and exercises that you can use in the classroom next school year. So our first one's going to be in 2 weeks on June the 2nd at 11:30 in the morning, 8:30 Pacific time, on virtual presentation skills. We did a survey of teachers, asked what topics you want us to cover. One of them was around presentation skills, virtually or in person, just best practice for public speaking. So we're going to tackle that on June the 2nd. The show of hands, are there any educators here interested in this topic? Again, we'll make recordings. If you can't come on time, you'll have it afterwards, but you'll see information about this topic coming out in the next few days. So when you see it, please sign up and either get the recording or join us live. And we're going to have sessions all summer, and you can use them for continuing education credit. Also, for everybody here today, we're going to give you a certificate tomorrow morning showing proof that you were here. And also for the educators for our summer series, we'll also be giving out certificates so you can show completion for continuing education credit. You'll have certificates for all of these sessions too over the summer. Okay, so those are our sort of upcoming things to know. Now I want to hop over one more time before we bring our guests back in. I want to bring up a page. So those of you who are new to us, you can understand as a company who we are. Okay, so again, we're called Rubin. We have an online curriculum called Emerge. And inside Emerge, we teach a variety of practical communication skills, email etiquette, life skills, phone and video etiquette. We teach employability skills like networking, emails, resumes, cover letters, internship and job emails, LinkedIn profile creation, job interview preparation. We also teach entrepreneurial communication, idea development, sales, website pages, public relations, fundraising. And we teach communication for leadership, writing as a manager, writing to clients, project management correspondence, public speaking, writing reports appropriately, and exercises for student leaders. Do we have any advisors here today in different CTSOs? Do we have any DECA or FFA or Skills USA or Student Council? Put in the chat if you're an advisor. So our curriculum Emerge, it integrates to any learning management system for single sign-on like Canvas, Schoology. Put in the chat, what is your school's LMS? Canvas, Schoology, Google Classroom, Moodle, what are you using in your school? And as you put that information in the chat, because it's always nice to see what everybody's doing in their part of the country. Thank you, Moodle. FFA advisor, great. Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that. I'd like to bring in our guests now. Hopefully they're still with us. Bring up Ryan and Alex back into our session. There they are. And what I'd like them to first do is, again, I want to thank them for making time out of their busy days to talk with us. I would love for them to first introduce themselves and explain their background, the work that they do in agriculture in very different ways. And then we'll start getting into some questions. So let me start with Alex and give us your quick background.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alex Martson. We run a small, we like to call it a small family farm in the Willamette Valley of Oregon. We raise Scottish Highland cattle. They are the long-haired, long-horned, usually yellow or red cattle that you usually see on any postcard from Scotland. They are a fantastic, very easygoing animal. They're about 95% lean to 98% lean through the whole animal. And what that has allowed us to do is sell a naturally low-fat, low cholesterol beef through to restaurants or retail markets, as well as other groups that would like to participate in that. It really just, it started as just a family farm back in the 80s and has grown to a little over 400 animals right now, with probably another 200 coming in the next year.
Wow.
We're in the middle of calving season right now, so I'm drinking a lot of coffee because every morning it's up at 5 a.m. and go walk the fields for the calves and make sure everybody's happy and healthy.
Wow. Thank you very much for that. And we'll learn much more in the next few minutes. Ryan, go ahead and introduce yourself and the work you do at ButcherBox.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to be here. So I actually studied business and design, but I am working in agriculture at ButcherBox. We are a subscription service, kind of like HelloFresh or Misfits, that's delivered to your door. And we source sustainable meat, seafood, pork, beef, chicken, from across the country and deliver it to anywhere in the lower 48 states.
And you work like in marketing, sales, brand strategy, right?
Yeah, I'm on their design team. So work mostly in marketing, but get to touch all areas of the business, which is really fun.
Excellent. So I want to share my screen and you can take a look at these Scottish cattle that Alex was talking about and the beautiful design of the website for ButcherBox. And I'm sharing this because for the students who have been here before or the teachers, what do I always recommend that we do before we meet new people. What's that word? I say it every single webinar. What's that R word? Can someone tell me in the chat? What do I say we need to do? And there's those cattle. Thank you, Elizabeth. Bowen. Oh, there we go. Look at that. Don't they listen to me? See that from previous sessions? I'm finally getting through. We do our research. We visit the websites of the companies we're about to talk to interview with, to learn from, and we have some questions ready. So I first want to go to the Martson Farm website. There's that Highland cattle, right?
Yep.
And we get into the origins of the animal, but I wanted to know a little bit more about the origins of how your family got into a family farm in the 80s. Like, how do you choose this cattle versus the ones we're more familiar with? Give us that backstory.
Well, so the farm was originally started as a way to keep us all busy out in Oregon. My dad was a lawyer at the time, and we needed something to do on the weekends. This is a bit more than something to do on the weekends at this point, but we originally had Angus cattle, which is your traditional beef that you see in a lot of grocery stores and a lot of restaurants. That was fine, but we were looking for something that was a little bit different, a lot easier, and a little bit more suited for the Pacific Northwest. It's very wet, not super cold, but very wet, and we've got a lot of native plants that need to go away, not just grass. And these cattle ended up being a lot like goats. So they eat the Scotch brooms, they eat the other vine maples, lots of the small stuff that'll be in a forest in the Pacific Northwest. And they eat it just like an animal would eat grass, and they do just fine on that. So we were looking for something to vary our herd and to make it a little easier. My parents originally met in Scotland on term abroad. And while they were there, they had seen these Scottish Highland cattle and thought they were, one, adorable, which they are, but also kind of fascinating. So we found the one breeder in the Pacific Northwest and started out with one cow, and it's grown a little bit from there.
That's great. And I have a question for Ryan, but as I do that, someone already put a question. Please start putting any of your own questions in the Q&A area at the bottom of the Zoom controls. So put your questions there and we'll get to them as we go. So add your questions. And I have one more for Ryan to, again, underscore the importance of asking other people questions. Even when you're the one going for the interview or going to an opportunity, it's good to ask other people questions. So Ryan, I'll go over to your website, which is very nice. The design is really nice. And like the branding, the layout, everything looks good. So I'll give you all the credit for that. Okay. It was all you, right? And so one thing that I was learning when I was on the website, as I come down the bottom, and it talks about trusted partners and fair labor practices. So what does it mean that ButcherBox uses fair labor practices and trusted partners for the meat and seafood that you provide customers?
Yeah, excellent question, Danny. So we pride ourselves on taking care of the animals, the environment, our customers, and of course, the farmers and partners we work with. For us, that means, giving good wages and also very predictable wages in agriculture. Farmers' income can really be dependent on just the cost of beef or the cost of corn at any given time. So we try to give very predictable wages. We try and support racial equity across as well. And importantly, too, as the supply chain moves along, that can affect, meat packers, the people who are transporting the meat as well. So across the board, we try and really treat all our partners super, super dignified and well.
And I think that your customers appreciate that, right? They like knowing the supply chain and that everybody, including the animals and the suppliers, were treated fairly when it got to them.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something that our customers value a lot.
That's great. So just before we get into some of the questions from our community, I just want to ask, and by the way, please make sure you put your questions in the Q&A as much as possible so that we can keep track of them all there. So question for Alex, like if you're looking to make a hire and you're about to add 200 cattle, maybe you got to hire some helpers, right? If somebody came to you and already knew a little bit about your business because they were on your website, they had done some reading, they did some homework, what would that say to you about that person, especially a young person who would want to work for you?
It helps immensely. The number of people we get that show up at our farm that just want to take pictures hugging a cow is insane. So somebody that comes out and understands that, one, these are a herd animal and not a pet, and knows a little bit about the history and the reason that we're raising these animals, goes a long way in us saying, all right, this person actually understands the model that we're going after, as opposed to somebody that just wants to come out and take a lot of Instagram photos with the cows.
Students, raise your hand if you understand what he's saying, that if you show up and you show you're serious, you stand a better chance at an opportunity. Okay. Ryan, what would it say to you? You're looking to hire for your design team, your brand team, and somebody actually knows about ButcherBox. They've read about them. They've looked them up. They've done their homework before they meet with you. What would that say to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, right now we're in the process of hiring actually other designers, and we get tons and tons of applicants. And in a really crowded field, if you have someone who you can tell is passionate about the work, cares about the work you're doing, shows a real interest, they're going to jump off the page. You're going to notice it in their resume and talking to them, and it's going to make you want to learn more about that applicant and see if they could really be a fit for your company.
Thank you very much. A question here. Let's get into some of our questions, and I also want to talk to Alex about this interesting seaweed situation going on, which we'll get to in a minute. Question for Ryan from Edward Carr. So Edward, thank you for the question. Said, are the products from ButcherBox from US sources?
So most of our products are from US sources. Some of our cattle does come from Australia, actually. And most of our salmon comes from not fisheries, but from up in Alaska, which is still part of America, but definitely not as local as some other things might be.
Okay. And a question from James. He said, are there certain characteristics or education you're looking for in a new employee? Alex, I'll ask that to you. If you're looking to hire to help on the farm, be part of the team and all the growth, what are some skills that the person should try to come in with, like practical skills?
Well, to be honest, the farming community is not what it used to be, in that you can't just be really good at fixing a diesel tractor and a hard worker. You've got to be able to be a little bit savvy with the business end of it, because a lot of times what we're running into is, I'm one person, my dad is older and just one person, and we need help from our employees to be able to go out to a farmer's market, go meet with the restaurant manager, a food services manager, somebody to let them know what we've got and what we can bring, if we've got different options that can do something for them. Lots of different skills need to come to this. So if you show up and you're great with a diesel tractor, that's fantastic. But so am I. Show me something that you bring that makes my life easier and brings our team up another level. If you are a whiz with SEO, along with very much a focused worker, I will absolutely be talking to you a lot more.
Wow, very cool. I do have one other question for you, Alex, because we had talked about this prior to today, that you're doing an interesting, almost like a science experiment with introducing seaweed into the cattle's diet. Tell us what that's about, and what are you hoping to gain from that sort of experiment?
So there was an experiment some time ago about introducing red seaweed, red algae. It's a macro seaweed, macroalgae, and I can't pronounce the scientific name of it, but sure. The short version is somebody studied the effects of adding seaweed to the diet of dairy cows. So now dairy cows are fed something completely different than beef cows. They're fed a varied diet, but it's a very specific diet in order to produce the right kind of milk. They produce a lot of methane because of that. The seaweed added into the dairy cow diet reduced their methane emissions by 95%.
Wow.
So that means that instead of an enormous farm of 1,000 cows producing something like 25 tons of methane a year, they're producing less than a ton. So wow. We thought, well, our cattle's diet is different. We don't know what kind of percentage of methane we're producing, but let's give this a shot. So we worked with our local agronomist, who had a connection with a local agricultural college, and they introduced us to this red macroalgae, and we've introduced it into the diet. And so far, for the few animals that we keep into a pen to be able to monitor their methane emissions, we're down 85%, which tells us that our animals weren't producing quite as much methane as a dairy cow, but 85% reduction in methane is significant for us.
And that can be significant for the environment if it's done at scale. So that's a very interesting study. Thank you for sharing that. Ryan, I want you to take us through, because you're working on sort of branding and how it's positioned to the market, to the customer. Take us through your day. What does an average day look like? What are the meetings like? What are the conversations? Give us a snapshot of your work week.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say my main focus is still on marketing, which is really cool. I get to, make our social media posts talking about the best grill recipes for this weekend with the friends, as well as, where our cows come from, stuff like that. I also do a lot of paid ads that you see on Facebook, and I'll have meetings about that. And I spend a lot of time just creating. Some of the things I really enjoy doing, though, are talking about more big picture stuff, such as the social and environmental report we put out very recently. And I get to kind of hear about what we're doing at a bigger level to be more sustainable, to hear about our supply chain issues, and to learn about how we can really continue to change the industry for the better, as it sounds like Alex is doing as well, and, trying to do that at scale.
What are some of those sort of, from like a recent report, some like big achievement, if you can recall one, like that the company was proud to share?
Yeah, absolutely. This goes more towards the packaging side, but as you can imagine, we're a frozen food company. One of the cheapest ways to insulate frozen food is with styrofoam. Terrible for the environment, and our early boxes used that. But we switched to a cardboard biodegradable insulated system too this year, and it just dramatically cut down our environmental impact, which is something we're really proud of. And we hope competitors and other companies in the space do as well, because if it's good for us, it's good for the world.
That's great. I do want to just real quick jump back to something Alex said, because I always want to see if students are listening, and the numbers that we hear, we want to remember the numbers. He said that his cattle are the methane reduction is what percentage? Did you hear that percentage that he said about his own cattle? I want to see if we were paying attention. We want to really listen hard for numbers and share our own numbers when we have them. Who heard the number he said just a minute ago? There we go, 85. Very good. I just remember when we're talking about ourselves as well, we want to be sharing the successes, the numbers that we have. That's a big achievement for him to say 85. It's a very real number that we can hold on to and share out with others. Let me get back to my questions here. We had a good one here from Austin Marzette. Another question for Ryan. What are some requirements to be part of ButcherBox? Do you need to have a college degree? Do you need to have any animal science background? Like, to work there, what are they looking for?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Our corporate office and presence probably has a little over 100 people, but we have, if you include our partners, well over 500, probably close to 1,000 employees. So, if you're interested in the corporate side, I think a college education is important, but definitely not required depending on the role. If you were interested in the more farming side, I'm sure there's different requirements, but most importantly, I think it's just having a genuine interest. I ended up at ButcherBox in large part because while I was in college, I did this sort of program studying just the local seafood in the New England area and how we can source that more sustainably, and how local chefs were kind of bringing that into school lunches and their restaurants. And I had an interest in it, and that really showed when I then applied to ButcherBox. So I would recommend for any job, if you have a real passion and interest and are willing to do some research, that's the biggest requirement, and a lot you can learn on the way.
What are some ways that students can show interest? For both of you, I'll start with Ryan first. Like, do you want them to show like some sort of high school or college study or portfolio, or like something tangible to show their interest? What would impress you to really prove to you that they're serious and they've been doing stuff before they met you?
Yeah, absolutely. As a designer, I've got to look at portfolios, see past work, make sure that they know how to use Photoshop and things like that. But in terms of showing interest, I would always recommend when you're applying for a job, it's great to have a clean looking resume, but make sure you write a cover letter as well. That gives you a chance to kind of stand out a little bit. And if you write in there, I'm interested in this because XYZ and I have this experience doing a similar thing, that really helps you stand out.
And let me just switch to another question here for Alex, because it's an interesting one, maybe more your day to day. From Marcia, she's actually in Brazil. And she said, how do you deal with environmental sustainability? What are your sustainability best practices with 400 cattle, 200 more? What does that look like?
So sustainability for us first is that naturally raising these cattle on grass means that we are not trying to truck in feed from all over God's green earth. We're not trying to find scientifically proven backbones of chemical compounds that will increase the size of these cattle. Whatever these cattle eat, they produce into meat, and that's all they get. So we trust that the animals, one, have been bred well enough to grow to the size that we need them for market. As far as the sustainability past that, we try, like Ryan's company, we do ship, and we found that styrofoam was the best insulator in the world, but also just horribly awful for the environment. We're trying to do this as naturally as we can, and styrofoam is as far from that as you can get. So we did find a product similar to what Ryan was talking about that is a cardboard insulation product that allows us to ship frozen beef across the country to restaurants that want it without us worrying about creating a larger environmental impact with that.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'll just have another question for you, Alex, from Isaiah Wilson. For someone to work for you, do they need to have any experience in agriculture and farming, or are you looking for hard workers that you'll train? What's required in your eyes?
For us, it's more about dedication. Farming is not something that turns off at 5 o'clock at night. We oftentimes have, this winter, we had a very large ice storm that came through the Willamette Valley area. That ice storm brought down 75 oak trees on our property and took out a good quarter of our fencing. Without fencing, our animals wander into places that they don't need to be and cause a lot of trouble because they're cattle and they want to eat everything they can get their mouths on. So from 6 p.m. until the next morning, we're out making sure all the fencing is up. If you can show up and show that you're dedicated to that kind of, every so often we've got an overnighter that is going to hurt and you're going to be tired, then we're okay with that. You don't have to have farming experience. We're looking for overall dedication to the product that comes out of our business, not just that all the genetics of our cattle.
Got it. Raise your hand if you think that if you're willing to work hard, you can do anything. You could find a niche in any job as long as you're willing to put in the time, learn, be teachable, be coachable. You don't have to be an expert in a field. You can just get started. A question for Ryan first, probably for both of you, but another great question from James Hatter. Thank you for the questions. How has COVID changed ButcherBox operations day to day?
Yeah, at first it had a huge impact on us. Some of you might remember about a year ago, you couldn't find chicken in the grocery store. And at a nationwide company like us, that kind of affected us as well. We had to basically take chicken offerings off our website and encourage people to buy. Yeah, you couldn't get it. So we had to encourage people to buy, seafood products and beef as well, which we think was kind of a nice thing, introducing people to less popular cuts. And that's just in terms of the actual livestock component of it. There's also, we've all been working from home essentially since the pandemic began. Occasionally, I've been able to go into our photo studio with a mask on to help out with the shoot. Some of the people who work on supply chain and work with farmers have gotten to visit some farms once or twice, but it's required us to be very careful and kind of rethink the way we operate.
Do you think that it's moving forward, it will change how you do business, or are you going to kind of just get back to who you are, or are there things now about your business model that have been changed forever?
I mean, I think companies can do a lot of great work when they can be together and collaborate. It's fun to be with the people you work with, make that personal
Yeah,
connection.
yeah.
At the same time, I work with people who are probably older than would have other been considered or from a different region of this country. And because you can work remotely, a lot of the barriers to working with someone are gone now. If you couldn't have afforded to live in a big city, well, now we can hire someone from anywhere if they have a Wi-Fi connection. So I think that's really powerful and is probably here to stay.
Thank you. And Alex, what about you? How has COVID impacted your business?
Well, 4 years ago, we started going pretty heavily into restaurants, just because that was a very stable kind of sales model for us. We knew it was known amounts going into restaurants
Stable until
and
COVID.
stuff. Yeah. All of a sudden that disappears. And what was once kind of the gravy on top of our business, which was the online retail sales, took off to an incredible level to where we were sold out 6 months in advance. So
Wow.
people were pre-buying beef on our website. So they would email us and say, I know you're out of hamburger. However, I'd like to buy 100 pounds. When can I expect to see it? And our answer was probably 4 to 5 months from now. And they said, that's fine. So all of a sudden we're getting pre-orders for stuff that is literally still on the hoof in a field, but will go through the system and be processed in a few months. So we found that, farmers markets closed, restaurants were closed, but people still have to eat. And when you're stuck at home and the offerings from the grocery store are limited, like Ryan's company found the chicken became very limited, people will go to where they can find the supply. If your neighbor has toilet paper, you go to your neighbor. If your local farm has beef available, you go to your local farm.
That's great. Thank you for that. And again, I heard another number in that last answer. I want to see if the students heard it too. He said at one point they were back ordered essentially on meat for how many months? What was that number? Who heard that number? It was a big number of how long it would take for people to receive the food that they had ordered. Anybody remember that number in the chat? Well, as 5, I think you said 5, and you also said 6, 4 to 5. You said it a couple ways, 4 to 5 months, 6 months. You were listening. What bottom line is you were listening. So you get the credit in our webinar for that. Another question for Alex from Javier Perez. Very simple question. Is it hard running a farm?
It depends on what your definition of hard is.
Okay.
For the most part, I enjoy it. It's exhausting some days. I have sunburned myself 6 ways from Sunday. I have frozen things on other days. It's enjoyable. Running a farm, depending on what level you want to be at, can be very easy, which is the model that we have tried to go to. Yes, we have several hundred animals, over about 1,000 acres of property, but it's not difficult because of the model that we chose to follow, which is just simple grass-fed animals. We let them grow for 2 years and then we can send them to market. That's easy. There's a little bit of this and that in between there, but if you've got the time, the drive, and kind of an interest in it, it is not difficult to be successful with farming.
Thank you very much for that. I'm curious from the students here, what are you more interested in? Is it the hands-on, on the farm, tending to the animals, get your hands on it, or in Ryan's line of work, it's more creative, it's conceptual, and they're both sort of driving at the same thing, the same end product, putting product in consumers' hands, or just doing it in a different way. So students, tell us in the chat, what interests you more? The conceptual, the branding, the strategy, or the sort of day-to-day walking the farm? Sam says hands on the farm. Okay, hands on the farm. Okay, all right. Not surprising. You came to learn about agriculture, but Austin says creative. All right. So it's important that students see that there are a variety of ways to be involved in the industry. Wouldn't you say, Ryan? I mean, your role, You would say you work in agriculture, essentially, but it's in a way that people wouldn't necessarily expect, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, going into a seminar like this, I would expect people to be really interested in working on a farm. And I grew up in upstate New York too, and I love our farms there. But our CEO had a separate company before this and didn't know a lot about agriculture. He was more of a strategy guy, so he had to get to know a lot of farmers really quickly to make his vision happen. And a lot of those farmers helped him along. So yes, they have hands on the farm, but they're really smart people who know how to run a business. They're super hardworking. They've got other skills, and they know how to partner with, not just their farm, but business strategists, the creative people, the truck drivers, everyone that it takes to really make something go from a farm to a consumer.
Thank you for that. I want to just take a quick pause because we always like to do a little communication lesson with students, and we'll wrap up with Alex and Ryan in just a second. You two stay, don't leave, stay right here. But I'm going to share my screen. We've done this worksheet before, so some of you students have seen it, but if you're new, I'd love for you to do this with us. So teachers, raise your hand if students message you and they don't capitalize I. A lot of text message speak out there, we know that. So as a company, we provide different worksheets. Students from middle school, high school, transition populations, it's a very simple worksheet here as an example. And we provide a sample message. We want students to practice improving. So what I want the students to do is look at what I have put in highlight right there. I would like for you to go to the chat, and I want you to write this line as a complete sentence. Proper capitalization and a period on the end. Can you please do that? I want to see that, because you know what a capital I should be. But we often forget because we're texting all the time and we go right into an email and it all looks the same. Austin did a great job there. Thank you, Josh. Great. Thank you for doing this, and keep it coming if you're working on it. Thank you, Donovan and Sam. Remember to put a period on the end. We're going to finish that sentence. Okay. So it's really important. Let me ask the question. I'll come back to the chat. I'll ask the question to both of you. Start with Alex. If you got a message from a student who wants to intern for you or work for you, and the whole message was one unbroken line, lowercase, everything, no period, no punctuation, what would that say to you? Would you take that person seriously to hire them?
Not likely, to be honest. My mom was an English major at Duke University and got a full ride to Stanford for her doctorate in English. Wow. My dad was a corporate lawyer. It has been drilled into me my entire life that, one, how you present yourself is important. I may show up some days, coming back home smelling to high heaven because I've been working on the farm, but I am absolutely never going to show up and use shorthand, inappropriate eye contact, all those things if I'm trying to work with a customer or a new client or any. I've got to present myself so that I know what I'm doing, and I want them to have confidence in that.
Wow. That last line is important. You want the person to have confidence in you, right? They can trust you to work hard for you. Ryan, what would a text speak message say to you from someone who wants to intern for you, work for you, shadow under you? How would that hit you?
Yeah, I mean, it's really important that we see well put together sentences, that they're following correct grammar and etiquette, especially because something I do is I create our ads that are seen by sometimes hundreds of thousands of people. So if there's a typo in that, well, a lot of people are going to see it, and it's going to make our entire company look unprofessional. And it's something I deal with all the time too, being one of the youngest people in an 100+ person company. Even still, that if I don't put myself out looking professionally, it reflects a little worse because I'm still trying to get that level of respect, making people feel confident in me, so I can kind of empathize with some of the people in the seminar that it's super important to make sure you're communicating really professionally so that you get the respect you deserve and you have opportunities to keep learning and growing in your role.
Love it. I love that you mentioned, you're one of the younger people on the team, so you're having to prove yourself all the time. And if you start getting sloppy with your language, it's going to make sense. Oh, he's just the young guy. He doesn't get it. He doesn't understand. We're running a very big business here, right? Students, show of hands with students. How many of you understand what they're saying, that this message is coming through, that we have to be very careful with our messages, because we can be the hardest worker that they've ever seen. But if we don't get through that first email, sometimes they might not answer us, and they'll never really know the kind of person we can be, because we're being judged on our messages. So I'm glad you raised your hand, and I think that's kind of a good end cap to our whole year of these sessions, because for Ryan and Alex, I say this every single time I ask the guest's opinion on etiquette in emails, because I need the students to hear from professionals, not just me and not just the teachers, that this is real life. This is real business. You know, Alex or Ryan, you said hundreds of thousands of people see these ads, right? I mean, this is real money, right? It's serious. So I appreciate you doing that. And just to wrap up here, and then we'll thank our guests. I want to just share what I had mentioned at the beginning for those who had missed it. For the educators, we have our last go round with this free resource. We'll have new stuff in the fall to share. We have a Google folder of worksheets and presentations for learning how to be an effective communicator. Like, there's that worksheet I just showed you how to capitalize I, professional text message writing, signing your name in cursive, which everyone needs to know how to sign their own name, but many students just are not quite sure how to do that. So we get into those lessons. We have an online presentation checklist for how to prepare for online or in-person presentations. And for the educators who missed it, if you'd like these resources, please type interested and your email address in the chat. And we would like to follow up briefly in the next day or early next week to say hello and explain the resources, help you fit it into future classes. So if you'd like these resources, please request them, and we'll be in touch promptly to pass those along. And finally, if you'd like or if you're watching this in a recording and you'd like these resources, you can always email us with that subject line of Rubin Worksheets. Again, in 2 weeks' time, we're going to have our first Rubin Summer Learning Series. This is for educators to help you with continuing education credits if you need them, or just to pick up some new skills and new activities over the summer. So we're going to cover virtual presentation skills, June 2nd, 11:30 in the morning, Eastern time. It'll be 1 hour, 45 minutes to an hour, and just giving out lots of good exercises, free exercises you can take with you back to the classroom. And finally, everyone today is going to get a certificate for being here. Teachers and students will pass that out on tomorrow morning, Friday morning. So look for it in your email tomorrow morning, and you can use this in your portfolio. Ryan was saying, show me your portfolio, right? This would be a great thing to show in a portfolio that you attended a webinar on agriculture, right? Wouldn't that say something to you, Ryan, that this student is serious because they've attended online events, they're learning, they're trying. And that's all we can really ask of ourselves at any age, is just show me that you care, right? So let me just wrap up, kind of get some final thoughts from both of you. So for the students watching, Alex, give us your sort of best advice to a student who is watching this and sort of looking up saying, how do I get into this field? What is your parting wisdom to those students?
There's 1,000 different places you can be in the agricultural world. Anywhere from someplace that Ryan is at, which is a huge company, which is fantastic, down to the boots on the ground at a farm, either small, local, or a larger firm. Find what interests you. Find what interests you, research it, look into it, find out if it's actually that interesting or if it bores the heck out of you.
Right.
If you love it, you will find a way to do it well. If you hate it, you will just do it. So find something that you love. I've found something that I've loved. It's enjoyable. I'm exhausted some days, but most of the time I'm having a good time. So
it's find something that, right?
Yeah, find something that is rewarding, and you've got time to figure that out. Your life is not over. It's just starting. Find a good research point and go from there.
Thank you for that. And Ryan, what would you say to students who are on the outside looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I think Alex offered a lot of great advice. I think it's important to try as many things as you can, say yes to as many opportunities. I've worked for big companies in the fashion industry, pharmaceuticals, animation, but I really enjoy working at the company I do now because it affects real people. It's such a tangible thing, felt across the entire country, which I think is really cool. And I would also kind of piggyback off something Alex said earlier, especially as a younger person, is make the life of the people you work with easier. I think if you can find a way to, no matter what job you're doing, really hustle and say, I know this is a hard thing, but I'll take it off your plate. I'm a go-getter. I'm willing to do it. It makes such a big difference and really helps you stand out.
Raise your hand if you like that advice. And that's actually one of our worksheet questions is, if you were to write either of them a thank you note, what piece of advice would you share that they told you? And making life easier for others is a great piece of advice. As we wrap up, I want to mention, because it's another sort of good life lesson, that I connected with Ryan and Alex through a Facebook group of fraternity brothers. So we were all in the same college fraternity, albeit at different schools. So I reached out to this community, now has 13,000 people in it or something like that. And they were both kind enough to say, I will help you with your session. So it's so important when you join organizations when you're younger to find ways to stay connected to those people throughout your life, because we're all helping each other now in all kinds of ways. They helped me today. I'm hoping I could help them down the line with whatever they've got going on. So remember that if you're in future farmers or whatever you're involved in, it's important to be involved something early, because those people can become connections and a support even many, many years later. So everything you do matters. Everything's going to kind of come back around in funny ways. So I wanted to end on that, because I think it's really nice that you could both be part of this today and we could be connected like that. So, all right, we're just a little bit past 1:15. I want to wrap up here and thank our guests today. I want to thank Ashley Middleton for her services. Thank all of you for being here, not just today, but over the past several months. We've had a great season, and we'll have the teacher focus sessions in the summer, and we'll get back to our virtual internship series starting in August with a whole other set of interesting jobs and professions and people. So thank you all very much. I hope you finish school strong, do well on your exams, have a great summer. And thank you again to our guests for their time.